Available in paperback and e-readers, Isis, Dark Incubus. The goddess next door gets enthralled in a romantic entanglement with an evil incubus in this all-new Isis series adventure. Get your copy of Isis, Dark Incubus in paperback and e-readers today. One of my Facebook friends left a comment stating that Marvel Comics editor Jim Shooter was fired in 1987 because an artist was upset about him establishing deadlines as related to artists turning in work at Marvel. Now, this allegation is one that I find to be quite troubling as a publishing professional myself, because in the world of trade publishing, when it comes to deadlines, deadlines are a part of life as related to the publishing business, and deadlines basically are something that are established as a standard for trade publishing to ensure that work is turned in at a reasonable time so that the editor-in-chief can basically review the work and review the work within a reasonable time to ensure that, one, the work is secured in place so that it can be reviewed, and two, so the work can be in place so that it's ready to be taken and given to other people in the whole production process, such as the colorists, or at that time the inkers and the letterers, and ensure that the art is in place so that the book can be released on time. This is all part of the production process as related to trade publishing. This is something we have to do in publishing when we're working with writers. Whenever you're working with a writer, you want to make sure that they have their manuscript turned in at a certain date so that you can ensure that you can give it a final look before you turn it over to the proofreaders, and the proofreaders can then check it over, and then you can get ready to set it up for page layouts and set it up for printing so that you can have your galleys ready to do, again, another final round of edits as related to punctuation, spelling, and grammar. This is all part of the production process as related to publishing. However, at Marvel Comics, it seems like this artist basically didn't understand the entire production process and held a grudge against Jim Shooter for looking to establish standards that everybody in trade publishing has to deal with as related to paperbacks and hardcovers and magazines and newspapers. When it comes to publishing, this has been a standard of process. You want to make sure you get your work turned in before the deadline because you want to make sure that your work is of the highest quality. That's how it's always been in publishing. But it seems like this artist who had an issue with Jim Shooter basically went out here and looked to use this as a reason to get Jim Shooter terminated, and that reason in and of itself again has me shaking my head, because this basically shows how this artist really didn't understand the overall business of publishing. Now, when it comes to comic books, this whole industry basically is a dysfunctional one, and it's a dysfunctional one because many in the comic book industry do not understand the business of publishing, and since they don't understand the business of publishing, this is why the comic book industry has struggled during the 1970s before Jim Shooter came to Marvel Comics. Now, before Jim Shooter came to Marvel Comics, Marvel was a dysfunctional place, and Jim Shooter talked about this in his blog, and as he talked about it in his blog, he talked about how editors were editing their own work, and you basically had a revolving editor-in-chief, which is a very bad situation to be in because, again, an editor editing their own work is going to wind up missing things because they are going to be too familiar with the material. Moreover, they're not going to be that second set of eyes that are going to catch many of the missing details as related to things, and they're not going to be able to look at this story from a perspective of the reader. So you really do need an editor to be objective and really look over the work to make sure that what's being produced is of the highest quality. So you do need an editor who is detached from the material, because they can give you, again, an objective look at the story. They can give you that objective look, and they can also, as they're looking at your work, make sure that it is of high quality and consistent with other work. And that's why you do need a objective editor, and that's what Jim Shooter was looking to be. That objective editor-in-chief would look over the entire Marvel catalog and look over the Marvel catalog to make sure that work was of high quality. Moreover, he wanted to make sure that work was being turned in on time, because in the business of comic publishing, it's all about sales. And one of the things that makes books not really go out here and get those strong sales numbers is books being turned in late. Because when a book is being turned in late, guess what? That book basically gets delayed on the schedule. And when a book gets delayed on the schedule, that means you're going to wind up losing sales for the month. You're going to wind up losing sales that month because this book isn't coming out on time. Moreover, there's damage being done to the brand as related to that title, because if the book doesn't come out on time, people get frustrated and then don't want to continue following the book because the book is not coming out in a reliable fashion. And that's where it has me scratching my head about Jim Shooter being fired as related to deadlines, because deadlines, again, are a part of the publishing business. And with deadlines being a part of the publishing business, every creator out here, whether they be a writer, whether they be anybody who, again, works in trade publishing, doing books or newspapers or magazines, they all know that their paycheck is all connected to deadlines, and they make sure that they go out here and schedule enough time to be able to produce work on time, so that can get turned in on time, so that they can get paid. So that's why it has me scratching my head that this artist that some say was John Byrne basically got Jim Shooter fired, because, again, when it comes to publishing, books have to be brought in before the deadline in order for business to get done. In order for business to get done in publishing, you need to have all of the elements brought in before a deadline, because the deadline basically is usually, from my experience, 90 to 180 days before the release date to the public. Usually you want to have your material in 90 to 180 days before the release date, which is usually 3 to 6 months. And you want to have it in because there's other parts of the process that need to be done. Usually when it comes to comics, from my experience, you want to get the art in so that when you have the art, you can go out here and hand it over to people like the colorist these days, or back then, you handed it into the inker. You handed it into the inker so that they could do the finishes on the art. And then after it's handed over to the inker, back then, it's handed over to the colorist so that they can put in the colors. I mean, these days it's different in that the artist does the writing and the art and the inking themselves sometimes, or they do the art and the inking themselves. But the art needs to be there so that the colorist can get access to the art and do the colors and the flats. And then that's passed on to the letterer. And again, this whole stuff needs to be done as related to process to ensure that product can be printed and be sampled and then sent out for final prints. All of this work needs to be done before the release date, and you have to have all of this together so that you can make the final files and then get the final files uploaded and ready for sale. And ready for sale usually about that 90-day point, because at the 90-day point, you want to be able to get those books into the catalogs like previews these days as related to comic distribution, or as I do it here at SJS Direct, I want to make sure that the book is in 90 days before I put it up for pre-order on Amazon Kindle or Amazon for paperback or other online booksellers. I want to usually have a 90-day window so that I can get the book up for pre-order so that we can again build up the advertising and marketing campaign so that we can go out here and sell the book to readers. That means I want to have that cover up so that people can say, hey, this is the book that's coming out. You can recognize the cover, and when you see the link on Amazon, go out here and put in the pre-order. Or in the case of comics, you need to have that cover up for previews so that when they come out with previews, the comic shops can put in their orders these days, or the newsstands can put in their orders. You want to have everything in line, because with everything in line, you can again get these books out quickly, and as you get these books out, you can go out here and build up that anticipation for sales. But sadly, according to what the viewer has told me, John Byrne really didn't understand that part as related to production and deadlines. And if this is the case, again, this is something that's really sad as related to this allegation, that he didn't understand how important deadlines were. And it's really sad if comic creators don't understand what deadlines are, because in this business of publishing, you need to understand what a deadline is and why it's important. A deadline basically is important because it gives everybody a date to let them know when everything needs to be finished as related to a project, whether it be a book, a comic book, a novel, or any sort of material like a magazine article or a newspaper article, or even a screenplay. In this whole business of writing, you want to be able to understand you have to work within deadlines. You have to work within deadlines, and you have to work within them because work has to be in so that everybody else in the production process can get their work done. I mean, it's very similar to what I saw with Gordon Ramsay's Hell's Kitchen as related to the line of chefs. You want to make sure that everybody is synergized as related to making sure that all the components of the plate are coming together at the same time, and the same production process goes on as related to books. And this is what's sad, again, comic creators not understanding this production process. And sadly, one of the best editors-in-chiefs was the one that got fired, the one who basically got Marvel in a place where it was competitive with trade publishing. Again, every one of the standards Jim Shooter had given Marvel basically were the standards of every trade publishing house. Everyone got upset because they had to follow actual rules of publishing and treat Marvel like the business it actually was. Now, the other component I found to be quite troubling was as related to a lot of comic creators saying that they got upset that Jim Shooter had the final say as editor-in-chief. And that one was also puzzling to me as a guy who works in trade publishing at his own publishing imprint for the last 10 years and has worked with other people. When it comes to publishing, again, this is a commercial business, and usually the writer doesn't get the final say on anything, whether it be a novel that they write, or a magazine article that they write, or a newspaper article that they write. No, usually it's the editor-in-chief who always got the final say on what was published, and most people know this in this business, except it seems many comic pros who think that they were the ones who's supposed to have the final say. No, you don't have the final say on products that are produced by another company or another publishing house. No, everything at a publishing house has to go out here, and the editor-in-chief gets the final say. And the editor-in-chief gets the final say because the editor-in-chief is the one who has to make sure, as the person who represents not only the eyes and ears of the public, but also represents the eyes and ears of the company's stockholders and board of directors. This is the guy who basically has to take account with those individuals in making sure that the book meets the standards of those stockholders and the board of directors as related to that company. That's the standard that it has to meet. And again, the editor-in-chief is the one who has the final say over things to make sure that this product basically is one that fits the standards and the mission of the company. It has to fit the standards and the mission of the company, and that's what the standard you have to meet as related to your work when you work in publishing, especially for commercial properties like Marvel Comics. Now, when it comes to a commercial property like a Marvel comic or a DC comic or any other intellectual property, your story has to fit in line with the parameters of the mission of the character as related to the continuity of the history. Moreover, it has to fit the standards of the company, and you as a writer basically have to follow these standards, and it's the editor-in-chief that makes sure that these standards are being followed as related to the overall company, and make sure that this is done, because what he doesn't want is that heat from many of these people at the corporate on that level. Moreover, he doesn't want that heat from the public as related to other entities that work as related to this business. And this is a commercial product again. And as a commercial product, you're not only looking to sell the product to customers, but you're also looking to sell advertising inside of that comic. You're looking to sell advertising to these companies that basically want to get exposure to your customers, and your product has to have a look that basically is optically appealing and basically optically going to work as related to the overall their overall business. I mean, if you have products like Hostess fruit pies and Kool-Aid and Stridex pads, I mean, you need to make sure that the book's content in the books basically meets a standard that doesn't wind up alienating not only the sponsors, but also the customers that would go out here and buy these products. Because if the products don't meet the standard as related to these sponsors, you're not going to be able to get them to buy advertising on the inside cover, or in the interiors, or on the back cover. You're not going to be able to go out here and sell those parts of the book and generate that revenue. That's what a lot of creators don't understand. They don't understand that publishing as related to comics is a business. It's not only a business of selling the comic as related to the content. That's the thing that brings people into the comic, but you're also selling to advertisers who are looking to go out here and sell comics. They're looking to go out here and sell the products inside of the book, whether it be at the time the Hostess Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle pies, or the Hostess pies, or the Kool-Aid, or the candies like Bonkers, or all of these other products. They need to be able to be insured or assured that, okay, the content in here isn't too graphic. The content in here, again, is meeting a standard that will be appealing to us and appealing to our customers. That's what a lot of people in creative at Marvel didn't understand in the 1980s. They really did not understand that in publishing, again, this is a business, and you're looking to not only get revenue as related to selling the printed sales, but you're also looking to get revenue as related to selling advertising, and you're looking to, again, be able to maintain your business overall. You're looking to maintain this sales business, and a lot of people didn't understand all the hats that Jim Shooter was basically juggling as related to running Marvel, that I understand because I do this myself every day here at SJS Direct. And again, this is why the editor-in-chief has to have the final say, because they're not only looking to sell these characters, they're also looking to sell to advertisers. They're looking to go out here and build and maintain this brand and its overall brand reputation. They understand that, again, some things may not be appealing to some creators. It may not make them happy, like in the case that is alleged as related to John Byrne, who was all upset about the character Northstar not coming out of the closet in the 1980s, but he didn't understand that this was Reagan-era America, and many people basically they were not comfortable with, again, looking to promote those kind of ideas in that mid-1980s period. And again, this could have led to a major backlash against Marvel. He didn't understand that at all. And he didn't understand that NBC, again in that same year, basically with the show Love, Sidney, was dealing with a backlash in and of itself, because the Love, Sidney show was starred Tony Randall as a member of the alphabet community in their first sitcom, but this show had basically only lasted 2 seasons because it was Reagan era America. But the whole thing is, he didn't understand that, again, you have sponsors, you have people, advertisers, you have things, and again, you don't want to optically hurt your brand. So he didn't understand a lot about the business of publishing, and a lot of people in the comic book industry don't understand the overall business of publishing, and that's one of the reasons why the industry is in such bad shape. Now, again, I don't condone any sort of alphabet discrimination, but this was the 1980s, and again, America was very conservative at the time as related to the North Star situation. He did come out in 1991. It was a lot more tolerant then, but the whole thing is that when it comes to Marvel, a lot of people didn't understand the business of publishing, and again, they fired Jim Shooter, and after they fired Jim Shooter, we clearly saw Marvel go into a state of decline. We saw it go into a state of decline because nobody really understood the publishing business, and the publishing business is something that you have to understand if you go into the business of comics. If you go into the business of comics, you have to understand that this is a business and it needs to be run like a business. And again, deadlines are a part of life for any writer. Deadlines are a part of business for any artist. This is how you get paid. This is how you get your next job. Because if you can turn stuff in on time or turn in stuff very quickly, and it is of a high standard, guess what? People are going to be going out here calling for you. They're going to be calling for you because they know that your work is consistent. They know you can turn work around very quickly. And basically, this can, again, build your reputation and lead to you booking more gigs. Because when it comes to the whole business of publishing, again, you're looking to book the gigs and get the work. And you're looking to get the work, and again, you have to be very indifferent about the work because the work is not yours. When you go out here and you do work for someone else, whether it be work for hire or even if you're getting a profit part of the percentage of it, you are basically doing work for someone else. And when you do work for someone else, this is from my experience as a writer, you have to go out here, and again, once the work is turned over, it's no longer yours. They paid for it, and once they pay for it, I don't really care about it at that point. Yeah, I finished the work. I was passionate about putting the story together, but once it gets into the EIC's hands and they finish telling me it's good, I move on to the next project because that project is finished. Once the EIC tells me, hey, this is good, we're going to go with it, I don't need to change it, or I'll make some mods if I have to. If they want to go and do the mods, I could care less if they do the mods because I already got paid for that work. I already got my check. And once I get my check, I'm thinking about, again, moving on because that's going to be printed and sold. And once it gets sold, it is what it is. I mean, you can't really get upset about these kind of things because, again, this is a commercial business. You're working with somebody else's property, and when you're working with somebody else's property, you're working on their project on their standard. If they're telling you this is what they want, then my job is to just go out here and give the EIC what they want. If they tell me this is what I want and we want this story to be a certain way, it gets written that way. And that's what got a lot of creatives upset at Jim Shooter. But these guys basically wouldn't be able to survive in any sort of actual publishing world. No, they wouldn't even be able to survive in Hollywood because in Hollywood, it's even worse than that. Everything is basically dictated by the executive producer and the director, or even above them, the executives who basically run these projects. The ones who basically run these projects basically tell you what to do. So these guys are sitting up there. They got mad at Jim Shooter for, again, giving them basic standards that anybody at a local newspaper has to deal with, anybody at a magazine here in New York deals with every day. I mean, you're getting upset over deadlines and you got a guy fired over deadlines, according to what the viewer had told me. And again, if this is what John Byrne did, it's really sad because I considered him to be one of the great comic artists, but sadly he doesn't seem to understand what it means to be a professional in this business, because in this business of publishing, again, deadlines are a part of business. Even novelists like me, again, when I did novels, again, you have to turn in your manuscript at a certain time, and it has to meet the editor's standards. If the editor wants to suggest that you put something in, you've got to put that in. It's not what you wanted to write at that point, because it's going to become their property. They're going to be the ones who buy the rights to that book, and you'll get a copyright for that book, and be able to retain all the other rights if you have a good agent. But once it's a part of their house, it needs to be as related to their house style and their house standard. And when you work in commercial publishing and trade publishing, you are doing work up to their standard. Again, I may go out here and pitch a book to an agent or a publisher, but it has to be written to their standard. If I want to get that advance, if I want to get paid, I have to do the work up to their standard, because they're the one, again, going to be fronting the printing and shipping and distribution costs. And if they're the ones paying the money, then I have to give the customers what they want and give the business producers what they want. And that's a sad thing that I've seen with this comic book industry. People not understanding that this is a business and not understanding the underpinnings of that business. Again, this is something Jim Shooter understood, and this is why Marvel was able to thrive in the 1980s. It was able to thrive because people understood this was a business. They understood that, okay, you have to have deadlines. Work has to be up to a standard where all the books are the same. I mean, this is what I put in place with the SJS Direct imprint. When you look at an SJS Direct book, almost all of them have the same house style. Almost all of them have similar interiors as related to front matter and back matter. And all the books have to be put together at a certain time in order to ensure that they get released on a certain date, because there are times when the readers are available. I mean, there's a time in the publishing world, usually from March to June, when people are picking up new books, or the time from October to February, where usually people are picking up books. And usually you want to make sure that your books are available in these times so that you can go out here and make the most money. And in order to make sure your books are available at those times, you need to make sure that your books are being turned in on time so that you can meet these dates on the schedule. And sadly, many comic creators or aspiring comic creators don't understand this, because sadly, many people have not been trained to understand how the publishing business works. They've not been trained to learn how trade publishing works the way I had to learn when I was out here submitting queries to different publishers. I mean, I learned all about the business reading about different blogs like Jim Shooter's blog, many other publishing blogs, and reading different publishing articles. And I learned all about the business of publishing. And again, if you don't understand the basics of the business, you'll wind up making a bad decision, like the people who fired Jim Shooter. They fired Jim Shooter, and basically what's happened here is this decision basically put Marvel in a tailspin. A tailspin in the short term. They did all right from about 1989 to about 1991 or so. And I believe the decline really started around 93, 94 when they changed their editorial. And again, if you don't have strong editorial to make sure that the house is maintaining its standards, then that house is going to grow into disarray like Marvel was in the 1970s. And you really need a strong leader in order to lead the publishing house to make sure that the work is turned in on a deadline, make sure that work is up to house standard. I mean, make sure that work is up to a standard that the customer can see that the quality is consistent from book to book. That's what you need at a publishing house, and Jim Shooter did bring that there. And if the rumor is true that the viewer told me about John Byrne getting Jim Shooter fired, then he basically, again, this legendary artist made a legendary mistake that basically led to the decline of Marvel, because, again, without a good editor-in-chief to make sure that the work is up to standard, then everything is going to fall into a state of disarray, and that's what happens when you don't understand the importance of an editor-in-chief and their role as related to the business of publishing. Now, if you want to check out some of my books on my SJS Direct imprint and those of the SJS Direct universe, you can pick up the books that starts with The Temptation of John Haynes and the sequel The Man Who Rules the World, and then follow that into the ISIS series, the Esteem series, and the John Haynes series. And you can pick up other books in the SJS Direct universe like those in the Spinsterella trilogy like Spellbound, the legendary Mad Matilda and Spinsterella, and the upcoming Spinsterella Goth Girl Summer. And you can pick up other books like The Thetas, A Recipe for Success, and Eternal Night. All these books comprise the SJS Direct universe, and you can find them on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find them at other online booksellers like Draft to Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and big box retailers like Walmart and Target. And if you want to check out my first full comic, John Haynes at Death's Door, you can find that comic on Lulu.com right now in paperback, and you can pick it up for the same price as it was on the 2022 Kickstarter and see how I would put together comics had I continued on with my quest to become a comic book writer. And you can also check out my other comic, Esteem No Good Deed, which is available on Kindle for 99 cents right now. And you can find that comic in paperback in the Esteem series book, Esteem Blast from the Past. And if you want to help me to be able to continue making more videos about the comic book industry and publishing overall, and continue to have money to pay for covers for SJS Direct projects, you can drop a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, ISIS, Amari's Revenge. The goddess next door is confronted by a Nubian queen out for revenge at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in this inaugural ISIS series adventure. Get your copy of ISIS Amari's Revenge in paperback and e-readers at Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.